Hello and welcome to the Why Am I Here webinar. I'm Lorraine Nilon and I'm your tour guide. And what I mean by that is I'm going to highlight some things around those really big questions that we've posed. So I'll give you the heads up on how we're going to work this because we're about to go on a journey together. We'll look at what is a soul blueprint and soul purpose and why it's important to actually look inwards. I call it being self-reflective and discover the truth of who you are, because that is one of the main purposes that life provides us. Then we're going to look at why things bother you that might not bother somebody else. Also, why it is important to work with our emotions, not to run from them, but to actually work with them and our triggers. And what are they trying to tell us? So that's a very interesting section of this. And then we're going to go into there is more to you than you realize. You're not just your thoughts and your emotions and your beliefs. You're way more than that. Going to have a little bit of a deeper look into your soul. Remember, you are a soul in a physical body. That's what a human is, a soul in a physical body. We can't control the world and the people around us, but we have this gift of freedom of choice about how we allow that to make us feel about ourselves. And unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this myself, we can use others' emotions and reactions to us to try and define a sense of self. And it never works. It always leaves us feeling lacking and often leaves us feeling very judged. I think I should explain a little bit about who I am so you know who's taking you on this exploration. I've spent well over 25 years in the exploration. So I'm a soul intuitive. Now, what that means is I can hear your soul. And when I look at you, I don't just see a person, I see a soul in a physical body. And I also know that there is a dichotomy in that soul system. There is the consciousness, the truth of who you are, the purity of your soul, your authenticity. And that's got a beautiful flow that flows through your system. And we also, including myself, have what I refer to as your emotional baggage, your soul's unconsciousness. And anything that we suppress or that we have created that's out of kilter with our soul gets stored in that system. So when I work with people, I come in and I read both those systems to put the jigsaw puzzle together for them so they can get those big aha moments where they come to peace with themselves, which means we've got to work out how to resolve those issues and why they're there and what are the life lessons out of them. So I spend the majority of my days working with others and we go on an exploration into their system. As I read the energy of either their soul's consciousness or unconsciousness, it gives us information. I was born a soul intuitive. I was born this way, that I could read energy. I didn't understand it when I was younger. I got very confused with it. I would know things and I didn't understand it, which created a lot of confusion because I would ask people, feel this, is this going on? And I could tell them what I've read, and most people said no. So I started to think there was something wrong with me. What am I reading here? What's going on here? And then later on, when I started working with more and more people and sort of, really started to embrace that part of myself, and I had some beautiful mentors as well, is that I realized that most of us struggle to be honest with ourselves, let alone someone else. So I had to learn to trust what I felt, and I had to learn how to have really good discernment, exploration skills, because we can get information from lots of different things, and if you just believe everything you hear, your thoughts and all the rest of it, then you can follow all these different paths that can take you all over the place, and that can confuse you. So that's why it's important that you understand your soul blueprint. So I'm looking forward to explaining that to you. What I would do with this awareness, this is how I developed my skill, just so you know, is that I would write down concepts. What is a soul's consciousness? And I just started, very basic information of what I could read. And then I would have a workshop. People from all walks of life would come in. They were only small workshops. And then I would sit around the table with these people for a couple of days, and then we would go through and watch the reaction, and people would give me permission to go in and read their stuff. So I started seeing themes of how, I could find this in 3 or 4 people in the room, and then I could find a version of it just slightly different, because we are all unique. So I very much work in themes and patterns. So as I did that, I would then develop, and then one question led to another question. You start asking a question, you start recognizing something, and it takes you to another question, and away you go. And I was really comfortable sitting in the ability to ask a question and just let life bring the answer to me. So through all these different people that came into the workshop, I developed a real understanding of how to read, how I was reading energy and what I was actually reading, and all the rest of it. So there was a good 15 years of being in that exploration stage. So I didn't publish then, I just stayed in there. So there's realms and realms of information that I've got on different subjects like judgment, manipulation, what spirituality is. I just was gathering all this information and reaffirming back what I could actually read. And then when I felt that this was a solid foundation, that anyone could come in and start getting this information, seeing what resonated with them, and allowing themselves to use what resonated with them to walk them along their unique path, I started publishing the books. So Insight and Awareness is really from that exploration. This is a very heavy sort of book to read because it's very packed with information. So the idea is that you open it up and you look for a paragraph or a sentence and use it as a jump point. And during this time, I worked with a lot of abuse victims. They just kept coming, and it's not my history, but it was really interesting. I could read the themes of different things that they were struggling to deal with and where it had taken them, because child abuse actually impacts the soul. So when I could come in and read the soul, it gave me all this information and clarified back to them, yes, you did experience this, and no, you did not deserve it. That's how breaking free from chains of silence come about. Sorry, I wasn't meaning to make this a sort of advertisement, but the books are very intricate to the way that I've experienced life. And if you're trying to understand who I am, I'm someone that goes in and researches stuff and explores it, and then I write it down. This is Spirituality, Evolution, and Awakened Consciousness. So this is a really easy book to read, and it really takes you through the journey of awakening to who you are and understanding yourself. So as you can see, I'm very passionate about this stuff. I'm very in tune with what a soul's looking for when I work with people one-on-one. And it has created a life that I've experienced, everything from betrayal to absolute close friendships to disappointments. I've made bad decisions, I've had failures, but how do you deal with these things? You need to be self-reflective. So that's all these life experiences that I've had on my path. I've documented my emotional reactions. I've documented the emotional reactions of quite a few volunteers that allowed me to go intricately into their system, and then reaffirmed it by going out and seeing if other people resonated with it. And here we are today at this webinar, which is another little journey that I'm on. So I hope that sort of clarifies who I am. That we are coming from a soul perspective, but a lot of the information that I'm about to give you and the insights, they're not just plucked out of my head and given to you. They've been explored. Let's get into the first question. I'm very excited for you. So when we're looking at soul blueprint, so basically when we're looking at you, your consciousness is flowing from where you come from, and it's flowing all the way through your system, constantly flowing. And your emotional baggage. So what we're trying to do is get rid of this so we can allow this to flow. Now it's flowing and we're only separated from our awareness of it, But the more aware we are, the stronger this flow becomes. So when we're looking at soul blueprint, we're really looking, and soul purpose, they're together here in this conversation. When we're looking at them, we're looking at what we decided before we entered the body as a soul in our purity. What did we decide that we were going to resolve and deal with this lifetime that we left from the last? So what emotional baggage are we going to try and clean up, basically? And I always refer to it as, think of it as your backyard is your backyard, and you can leave it messy and thorny and full of bindies and full of weeds and all the rest of it. But somewhere along the line, you've got to come back and clean up that backyard. And that is your soul's unconsciousness. So part of our blueprint and our purpose is actually to clean up what we've created previously. So there's all these different things that we know that we need to resolve. So, for instance, if I come back this time and I knew that resentment has been a problem for me, I'm going to have experiences of either observing people being resentful or experiences that are going to make me resentful because it's in me. So because that energy is in me, it is a place that I'm going to react from. So if I resolve the resentment, I can't just resolve it, I've got to replace it. Otherwise, I'm leaving a gaping hole in my unconsciousness. So if I replace it with self-compassion, self-love, full understanding, all of a sudden that energy within me has altered, and it remains that way unless I choose it not to be. So I've seen many people who resolved, or just keep with resentment as a theme, resolve their resentment. They've got a layer of it, and then they hit another layer, another deeper experience, or old past stuff comes up for them. It's just another layer. It doesn't mean they didn't resolve this part. That was just a layer. People get very confused on that. So once you understand that all our emotions are layered, then you can start trusting that, okay, I've resolved that part of it, but here's another part of it, and I must be ready now to deal with the deeper stuff, and let yourself come down the layers, because people seem to react and go, oh no, I didn't resolve anything, this is all crap, and I just, blah, 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 and I'll never get out of it. And it creates that prison I was talking about, pulls you back in. So remember that every unresolved emotion, belief, fear, control structures, there's different layers of it. So with your blueprint, you're going to have all these different, look at it as your purpose. You're going to have all these different experiences, what emotional energy is involved, what beliefs are holding you back, and what lessons can you take from it. And as you come more in tune with living that way, you actually start understanding the purpose of a lot of things, which changes the game for us. On our blueprint, there's crossroads that we get to, and we can do it the hard way or we can go straight up. It just depends. And it's not really about the decisions that we just make. It's about the collective decisions around us, because we are also at the mercy of different experiences that we have no control over. One of the things I sort of point out to people too is, I agree with when we're having experiences with others that can reflect stuff back to you. But if someone is being nasty and mean and cruel to you, do not use that as, oh, what can I learn from this? Take notice of your reaction, but don't give that as an excuse as to why they've done it. They have chose to be mean and nasty to you. Allow that responsibility to land on them and not take it away going, oh, they must have done that because I needed to learn this. If you learned something out of it, brilliant, but don't make it an excuse. It's one of those trip things I see a lot of people do, and all it does is justify someone who's doing something nasty and leaves you in this false sense of, I'm taking the purpose out of it and then it will stop. No, it doesn't quite work that way. It's just something to be aware of, because I see it a lot with my clientele. When we look at soul blueprint, what we've got is we've all agreed to certain experiences we are going to have. Let's have a look at what is soul blueprint and what is soul purpose. Now, they're very similar. The blueprint is there is a rough mud map. Because we've all got free will and freedom of choice, and we're not Robinson Crusoe, we're not on this island alone. What actually happens is there's these multi-strands of energy. Different people's decisions impact you. Different global decisions impact all of us. So there's all these different things that you are not in control of that can change your environment at any time. But when we're looking at the soul blueprint, it's what did you decide you wanted to learn and resolve this lifetime. Now, there's some souls, they have come to resolve certain types of emotions, beliefs, control structures. There's other souls, they're here just experiencing things. They know they're not ready to resolve it. They just want to fully experience it, and they'll have a go at it again later. And there's other souls, which I class myself as, who have decided to leave no rock unturned. And they are those real spiritual explorers who are looking for grounded spirituality so they can feel the evolution within their soul. They want to resolve and evolve. Now, to evolve something, what we need to do is integrate the life, get the life lesson, understand what how selves, make a decision if we want to stay there, increase it, decrease it, resolve it, whatever it is. So if I came here to deal with resentment and I recognize it, start acknowledging when I'm going resentful, start acknowledging what makes me resentful so that I can make conscious decisions in those experiences. That means I'm actually working with my soul purpose, because I know that part, that energy impacts me and makes me feel unauthentic. So when we do that, we're starting to live our soul purpose. Most of us think our soul purpose is what we do for a career, the results of our effort, and that there's a point to that is actually true. Through these experiences that you're having, you can find what you need to resolve so that you can evolve. So some people are absolutely destined for all these different types of experiences because they're the experiences that are going to drag up whatever is deeply buried in their system. To sum up, your soul blueprint is your intent that you had for this lifetime. What was it that when you leave the planet you wanted to have experienced, resolved, and evolved from? That's what's in your blueprint. Your soul purpose is actually to come in, and the different experiences you have is to operate from that original intent and find the truth of who you are. Our soul's consciousness knows how to keep niggling at us. We can feel when we're out of kilter with our natural selves. Now that is something that we should work with. And that's why it's important that you turn inwards and you take notice of those nagging feelings or if something's not right, because it's a little signal from your soul to say, here's an opportunity. Here it is here. Take notice. How are you reacting? What are you feeling? Why are you responding that way? And when we work with that, we actually start moving, we start learning, we start being engaged with ourselves from a soul perspective. Now, I always believe that people come back to their original blueprint. We may go, instead of driving a straight line from one place to another, we might do every mountain, every pothole, every flood. We might do heaps of experiences getting there, but there'll be this moment where you go, I was always going to get here. Some people feel it like a deja vu, and you just have this awareness that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be anything major either. It can just be that moment where you feel like I was meant to get to here. It's always good if you can recognize that you've hit that moment and it feels like a familiarity, like, have I been here before? But it's just your soul knowing, letting you know that you have hit a point in your blueprint. So I always get excited when I feel that. I hope that gives you a different perspective. That is a very short version of how to answer that question, and it's a big question. Let's have a look at the next question is, why do some things bother you, but they don't bother others? And it really comes back down to that soul purpose and the soul blueprint. What was your intent? Because if there is something that you were meant to resolve and you had in your intentions to resolve this lifetime, then there'll be things that stand out to you. They'll impact you greatly when you feel them or when you do them. So say if in my blueprint I had to deal with self-loathing and self-judgment, then I can really, really wind into that stuff, because until my soul is saying you intended to live this, you intended to experience this, so you have the opportunity to resolve. Now, we try to forget, we try to renege on the deal, but we'll keep feeling it and we'll feel it quite intensely because it is part of our blueprint, because it is part of our original intention to resolve. Now, when we work with that, all of a sudden we've got a game changer. Instead of beating ourselves up for whatever the unresolved emotion or belief or fear that we've got, we can start turning the table and going, I was looking for this. This is what I wanted to understand to give my soul more freedom. So then we can come in and be in the exploration. Now, it's not, like I said before, you've got to remember everything's layered. So you might explore one part of it and then another life experience happened and you experience another part of it. So trust yourself that when your emotions are there in your face, that they're telling you something too. They're giving you information, and let yourself expand what you think that information could be instead of automatically going, I'm beating yourself up for it, which is, a natural response that we all have. And sometimes those emotional triggers, especially if we've got a history of abuse or we're in, we all end up in these emotional storms where we have experiences that just throw us around and all our emotions come up, whether it's anger or hurt or confusion, all types of things that come up. Remind yourself that you've been triggered. Now, even if you're not sure what triggered you, because that happens, sometimes we feel energy and it's enough to trigger us. So we're looking around and it doesn't make sense to us because we're like, I haven't got a story to tell as to why I feel this way, but I feel this way. It may have been you felt something in your own system. You might have felt something off someone just energetically. So give yourself permission to work with it. And there are those experiences that we have in life, tragic moments, death of a loved one, divorce, loss of finances, all those kind of things, loss of any type of security, whether that's physically, emotionally, financially, all those types of experiences can bring up all the stuff that we need to resolve. So trust yourself to be present with it. When our emotions are really triggered, it's hard because we are in that emotional storm. So give yourself permission to experience the storm. And as it starts to settle, that's when you can come in and be more reflective. But it's also a brilliant time to come in there and start working with what you've already experienced. It's very hard when you're right in the middle of it. You've got to have a high level of soul maturity to be able to pull yourself back. Remind yourself that you can just pull yourself back, but don't constantly try and deal with everything at all times, because what that will do is create a control structure as well, which can become like a backdoor way of tripping yourself up. But when you feel yourself going, acknowledge you're in an emotional storm, acknowledge if you can what's triggered you, something someone said, an experience, whatever it is, then acknowledge if it has a history behind it. Is it part of something that wasn't, is it bringing up stuff that wasn't resolved before? Anyone that's gone through a divorce and all of a sudden you're reliving the last 20 years, you'll get it. Anyone that's had someone say something and remind you of someone else that it used to put you down all the time, they're all triggers. They're all things that are triggering off a sequence thing. It's not just one thing. So when you're looking at those kind of events, give yourself permission to go, hang on, it's not just about this. It's about my past. It's about how I felt as a child. All those different things, and broaden out the way that you look at it. And when you're being reflective, that gives you a greater scope to actually understand what that lesson and the emotion is that you're experiencing. All our emotions, all our fears, and all our beliefs, they're telling us something. So when you're being negative against yourself, we're very big on judging ourselves and we're very cruel to ourselves. When you're doing that, work with it and go, why would I do that to myself? Start questioning yourself on why you give yourself permission to treat yourself that way, and start asking yourself the question. Now, what normally happens is we start justifying the negative judgment. We start telling ourselves, well, of course I judge myself that way because blah, blah, blah. It's a brilliant way to find our buried issues. If you are justifying being negative to yourself, you've got unresolved emotions, and you've got fears and beliefs that you need to resolve so that your soul can be free of the jail it creates. So can you see, when you allow yourself permission to really work with your emotions and whatever has triggered it, that you can start going into the different layers of stuff hidden in your emotional baggage. Not always easy, and it's really hard for us to be honest with ourselves. That is why self-reflection is a skill, and broadening our self-awareness requires effort. It requires us to be present and to be engaged in our own experience, because normally what we do is we start feeling like life is happening to us and everything around us is happening to us, and we can very much feel like a victim to what we're experiencing. Is when you come from a soul perspective, you can go, okay, if this is the experience I'm having, whether I like it or not, this is my reality. What can I take from it? What can I explore in this? What can I learn from this? And you start resolving. And the more you are feeling in the flow of your authenticity, the less and less you'll be triggered, because the things that can trigger you are starting to be resolved. So never beat yourself up if you're having some emotional heartache times, because those things are giving you the heads up on what's left in your system to resolve. And you can use them to find what is a path to resolution, which will then make it evolution of your soul. And that takes you to soul maturity. And the last two questions, the reality is you are more than just your beliefs, thoughts, and fears and emotions. And when you recognize this flow of your soul's consciousness, and that this blanket over the top is your soul's unconsciousness, and that is the unnatural part. It's not meant to be there. When you're in your natural state, you don't have all these unresolved emotions. When you're in the purity of your soul, you don't have that. When you recognize that you're more than you realize, what that does is gives you permission to start expanding your awareness. Now, when we close ourselves off and we believe we know, we already know who we are, and we start believing all those negative beliefs we have about ourselves, or we start having statements like this always, it never, all those kind of statements that makes you feel like something is permanent, you're actually stopping yourself from expanding. And the more your awareness expands about the truth of yourself, even the truth of your unconsciousness, what happens is you're giving yourself opportunities. When you feel stuck on that merry-go-round of thought, emotion, beliefs, fears, and just all these things keep moving around, and you don't really turn around and have some real discernment in it. Do I want to believe that? Is that how I want to live? Is this the truth of who I am, or is this a blanket over the top of who I am, and I can't see myself without the blanket? When you start really looking at that, you become part of the exploration. To know oneself is a famous quote, but to know oneself means that you have to be in the exploration so you can discover bits and pieces about yourself that eventually the jigsaw comes together and you get a bigger picture. And that really is the soul journey. And the purpose of life is for you to come back and through your experiences understand the truth of who you are while you have freedom of choice to do whatever you want to do. That's the important part, is when we're in life, having life in a physical body, we're given a freedom of choice. We can decide what we are going to value. We can decide what we are going to nurture. We can decide what we're going to foster. And if we're fostering our unconsciousness, we're just expanding our unconsciousness. We're making the backyard grubbier, dirtier, junkyard, putting junk and junk and junk in there. When we're nurturing our soul and nurturing the curiosity within our soul, and we're prepared to take self-responsibility, then all of a sudden we realize we're way more than just our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. We're more than that. And that gives us the ability to start feeling like we are in a position to start resolving what doesn't work for us and embracing the truth of ourselves. That broadens our awareness, lets us feel more, hear more, be more engaged, and it gives us some pleasure in being in the exploration. Otherwise, all we see is just this bombardment of negativity. Now, we'll all have stages where it feels a little bit like quicksand and it's dragging us down. But when you remember who you are, that you are a soul in a physical body, that one remembrance can be the start of starting to pull yourself towards safety and starting to really explore who you are. And that's a journey. And the last one, why is it important to embrace the gift of freedom of choice? Here I actually want to tell you a story. This is not my story. Somebody else told me this. There was a spiritual man and he was sitting down underneath a tree, and then a journalist came over and thought he was a fraud. So he walked over and he slammed him. He gave him all this negative judgment and attacked him, and the journalist was just cruel. Anyway, the spiritual man didn't respond. And then the journalist said, why won't you defend yourself? You must be a fraud. You must be this. And he said, if you walked over here with a gift and you handed me the gift and I didn't take it, where does the gift go? And he said, I'd have to take it home. I'd have to take it with me or throw it on the ground, ignore it. He said, that's right. So your judgment you came over here to give me, I decided not to take it. You can take it back with you, you can throw it on the ground, but I'm not taking it. I know who I am. And we're all trying to get to that point of, regardless of who says what about us, regardless of what we've experienced, we come back and in the storm we hold to ourselves and we know that it is of value. And that is why it's important for us to understand the gift of freedom of choice. We all have experiences where someone has sprayed us with their negative judgment or want to make us their dumping ground for their stuff. And that's why when we understand that we have the gift of freedom of choice, even though we might emotionally react to different things, when we come back and we're really contemplating what has occurred, we can start owning, you know what, I'm not taking that on board. I am good enough. I don't need your opinion. These are big questions, and life is full of big questions. One thing I would like you to take away from this webinar is you are unique. You are rare and precious. There is only one of you on this planet. There is only one soul exactly the same as you. And your path to your own self-discovery is unique. And that is how it's meant to be. It's not about doing what others do. It's like working out what resonates with you, what works for you, and really exploring. Don't let your history be this baggage that's following you around. And if you can, be really honest. I know that's something that's really easy to say. Honesty is a lot harder, especially with ourselves, than we think. I coach people on really how to be honest with themselves and how to then be accepting of what they know is true, because sometimes what we do is we ask a question and then we don't let ourselves answer it, and that we have inner wisdom. And anything to do with my co-authors or the books is all about you finding and tapping into that inner wisdom so you can really continue the expansion of your self-awareness and soul maturity and walk your unique path, because you're meant to, you're destined to. If this is something that you're interested in, I encourage you to go and have a look at the Reflect 7 Essential Keys for Self-Reflection. It's a more, obviously more structured than the webinar, and you're given lots of questions to question and ponder and be reflective. And by the end of the course, you will understand way more about yourself. I promise you that. So the answer to why we are here, in my opinion, is so that we can learn from life, learn from our emotional reactions and our feelings, and to really be in the process of resolution and evolution, and trust that we are worth the effort required to live an authentic life, experiencing exactly what we needed so we can clean up our backyard and keep expanding our awareness and maturing our soul. All sounds simple, but it is actually a wondrous journey when you're really engaged in it. If you have made it to this end of the webinar, you're a curious soul, you're a spiritual explorer, which means don't give up on that. Let that fan that spark within your soul and let it take you where it needs to. And if you want to keep expanding on being more self-reflective, go and have a look at the online course, 7 Essential Keys to Honest Self-Reflection, and make sure you get all the bonuses and the discounts that are on offer. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's more interactive than a webinar, and you're going to be asked some hard or interesting questions, but it takes you on a journey of self-discovery, and you don't even realize how far it's taking you in. So each section has a beautiful way of asking you these questions that are going to take you further in your own awareness and keep expanding on your sense of self. So the more we understand ourselves, the more authentic we can be. Thank you for being part of my day.